Oh shit. Yeah. All right. What's going on, y'all? The Daily Go Getimism show all up in your area. We doing it a little different tonight. Have to start it off this way. We're having some technical difficulties. Sign issues, all of that. But none of that is going to hinder, when we have to do what we have to do. And what we have to do is we have to go get a business show. I'm your host, Sun752, and it's on and it's on. So what's going on, y'all? Tonight on the Daily Go Get a Business Show on this Pretty Petty Tuesday, we are talking about nobody goes against grandma. Nobody goes against grandma. You know why? You know why? You know why nobody goes against grandma? Actually, I'm not sure. But I'll tell you this: grandmothers get a level of respect that other people in the family just don't get. Your mom or your dad might be somebody who you rebel against, but your grandmother, uh-uh. You hear people tell stories about how their grandmother used to say this, their grandmother used to say that, their grandmother was the best cook, their grandmother was the most knowledgeable, the grandmother was the grandmother of the whole community. Everybody knew Miss, everybody knew sister, everybody knew mama, everybody knew sister. And pretty much everybody has that story to tell. And it's pretty remarkable when you think about the fact that there have been plenty of people who were the most gangsterish. Yes, that's a word. Gangsterish, most thugged out street dudes out there in the world. But they would do anything in the world to still show their grandmother's respect, to make sure that their grandma didn't find out some of the atrocities that they really committed. You know what I mean? And I think it's a really interesting thing when you think about it. How you may not extend that same type of gratitude, courtesy, love, and dedication and protection towards your mom, but your grandmother, big mama, nanny, my mom, granny. People don't be playing about their grandmothers. I don't know what it is. I mean, I love it because it's the elders. You know what I'm saying? Many people have grabbed the switch out of their mother's hands, the belt out of their mother's hands, have ducked shots from their mothers, even attacked their mothers. Grandmothers, you're going to take that ass whooping. And you're going to still love them afterwards. I've seen people cuss their mothers out. I've seen people talk about their mothers like a dog. What should I say? Talk about their mothers like dogs. And I've seen them, I've seen their grandmother do pretty much the same things that I've seen the mothers do. But it sure ain't looked at the same, not by the grandkids, especially if the grandmother has raised the kids, because for whatever reason, if the parents weren't able to raise the children, like let's say your mom was too sick or too much into the streets or on drugs. We saw a lot of this during the 80s. A lot of parents were not available for their kids because they was too busy getting high. The crack era was doing a job on us. It was doing a job on us in the community, but more so in the family. So a lot of children went to go stay with their grandparents in the 80s. The craziest thing about the 80s is, well, number one, that's not a phenomenon that was limited to the 80s, but we saw so much of it in extra form in the 80s and 90s that we had to take note of it. My dad was raised by his grandmother, straight up and down. And to my knowledge, my grandfather or my grandmother were not on drugs, but they also were not in North Carolina. They were all from North Carolina. My grandfather, my grandmother were not in North Carolina. My father was, and he lived with his grandparents. My grandmother lived up in New York. My grandfather lived out in Chester, Chichester. He was somewhere in the Philadelphia area, Philadelphia suburban area. So it is what it is. So it's not like people have just started to live with their grandmothers for whatever reason. But in the 80s and in the 90s, we saw an abundance of it, probably that we haven't seen before or since. But the thing about the 80s that was so remarkable is that a lot of the grandparents was getting high too. A lot of the grandparents was getting high too. I will never, ever, 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 ever forget these tenants that I had. These tenants that lived on Woodstock Street. Woodstock Street is between 20th and 21st Street, going north and south. This particular 100, because we don't own a house no more, so I can sit down, was between Cambria, between Cambria and Toronto. Between Cambria and Toronto. And I'll never forget when I went over their crib, like something was wrong with the toilet or something like that. And I remember when I knocked on the door, they answered the door. It was a bunch of kids in there. And I saw all of these crack vials all over the floor. I couldn't believe my eyes. Like, okay, y'all get high. But y'all not only getting high in front of the kids, y'all leaving the vials around. This is, now you have to think about when this was, because it was still vials, not the little crack bags, the little cocaine bags, the little mini Ziplocs. No, these were vials. So, and they were everywhere, from the front door, which led to the living room, and they were an older couple. One of them looked like he had like respiratory problems. This nigga getting high like that. So I think they had a bunch of like foster children and all of that, man. This was a whole mess. Hey, Omar, how you doing, man? You know, listen, yeah, the toilet upstairs is messed up. So, and you know, off the mom and the dad. And the mom and the dad looked like grandparents. They didn't look like the parents of the kids. But it's all these vials, these crack vials all over the place. I'm like, thinking back on it, I should have just reported them. But I think I was so shocked. And I'm saying that I'm telling this story to say this. The grandparents were getting high like the parents were. So these are foster children. They probably had some of their biological children there, some grandchildren in there, and some foster children in there, because they were like all flavors. And I was like, this is a terrible, terrible, terrible situation. This is bad. This is bad. But I'll bet you each one of those children, if that man and the woman were the grandparents of that child, I'll bet you that the story that they tell now is like, nah, my grandma, my granddad, they was all of that. They always held it down. They always took care of business. They always blah, 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 blah. And I'll tell you the strangest part about this whole thing. They paid their rent. Their rent was paid every month. Well, I got, somewhere between smoking the crack and probably the food bill. I guess those foster checks, foster child checks or whatever. They kept up with the rent. We never had a problem with them keeping up with the rent. Eventually, they had to move out of the place because they needed a bigger place. They had too many kids. But I'm like, Dude, what social work? How they get kids? All right. But I bet you their story nowadays is, nah, my grandmother, my grandfather used to hold it down. They used to hold it down. I'll bet you. So I said, that's what we working with. Yeah. That's what we working with. Why? Hold on. I need something. Okay, this is what I need. How can I get this? How can I need to. I'm trying to copy the description of this show because my browser on the computer is acting a fool, but it's not working. And not working. Why not working like that? Mm. Does it normally work that way? Does it normal? Wait a minute. Something ain't right. Hold on. We gonna get this thing done. Somebody gonna represent for mine. Somebody. Yes. That's not what I want. Why can't I get it? It's not letting me. Oh well. So okay. Anyway, nobody goes against their grandma. Now, maybe I should have said nobody that I know goes against their grandma, because I'm sure some people have gone against their grandmother. I've heard some people talk bad about their grandmother. I've seen some people argue with their grandmother. I've seen some grandmothers cuss their kids out, cuss their grandkids out. I've seen it. Locally, locally, nationally, or whatever. But for the most part, I have to say that most people that I know, regardless of what they was doing out there in the world, regardless of what they was doing out there in the streets, regardless of what they was doing out there personally and professionally, they tried to protect their grandmothers, shield their grandmothers or their grandparents, of whether they respected only one or both. They tried to shield them from the knowledge of who they really were, or well, I shouldn't say. I don't know. The older I get, the farther I get away from saying who somebody really is or how somebody really is. Because I'm seeing more and more that these are just added facets of people's personalities. I can't say who you really are or who you're really not. Because the same way that you consistently do something that I don't like, you also do some things that you also consistently do some things that I don't notice or don't take particular take particular note of, or do some things that I like. So I'm not gonna I'm getting farther and farther away from saying this is the real you. The bad part of you can't be the real you, especially when that's not the part of you that is actually the majority. It's just the part that pisses people off. So we like to say that that's the real them. But let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it grooving. Let's talk about Granny. What's up, Grandma? Nobody disrespects Granny. She's my real favorite girl. And I miss my grandmother, man. I loved my grandmama. I did. I used to get a big kick out of my mother's mother. I used to get a big kick out of her. She was funny. She kept it a buck. Talk about pulling no punches. Like with my grandmother, I would have to say that my grandmother I would have to say that my grandmother wasn't no liar. But at the same time, I would have to say that because she told so much, she just revealed so much. If she was lying, I wouldn't know the difference. I wouldn't know the difference. All I know is that she used to give it up. And a lot of things she said had shock value, but she never said it in a vulgar way. It was weird. I don't even remember her cursing like that. Bless y'all too. Thank you. I appreciate it. What's going on? T. Carey Wright, Stacy White, Carol Chamberlain, Mia. What's up, y'all? What's up, y'all? Let me see. T. Carey Wright says, my great grandmother Carrie was not to be effed with. She didn't curse or yell, but she had a way of commanding the room. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Like, did they really command the room, or did we just see it that way? Like, did they sprinkle some kind of magic dust on us to make us look at them in a certain type of light? Because the rest of the world couldn't have looked at them the same way that we did. Because if they did, then they should have been more famous. They should have been more rich. They should have had everything that they wanted. We know that there are grandparents out there that struggle. We know all grandparents can't be rich. I mean, some of our grandparents lived in the projects. Mine did. But I swear to God, it seemed like everybody in the projects knew my grandmother and everybody liked her and loved her. That's the way it seemed. Look, my grandmother died in 2002. People still talk about my grandmother to this day in the West Lawn projects in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They still be like, yo, the ramp that she used to ride her scooter on is still at her. When I go up to Milwaukee and I ride past where her project apartment was, and really I can't even really call it a project apartment, because what project apartment has a upstairs and a basement, a full basement. Like, they projects different. Up in Milwaukee. They projects different. They got a basement and an upstairs. Okay. But yeah, the ramp that they built for her to be able to ride her scooter, because, you know, she had bad hip and all that kind of stuff, is still there. The ramp is still there. All right. But then again, I haven't been up there since 2014. So, but I bet you when I go back up there, I'm gonna go check it out. It was there in 2014 though. Real trap. All right. And T. Carey Wright says, nobody will ever get respect like my great grandmother. Wow. And Carol says, me too. And Carol says, Harriet was 5'2" and a real powerhouse. Nobody got away with anything with Harriet. Harriet. And Carol says, ain't no grandmoms like the one we had. I hear that. TK Wright says, My great grandmother was 5'3". Wow. Mia says my grandmother on my dad's side was nasty and very mean. She definitely had her favorites. I do have to give it to her though. She brought us together for Thanksgiving. Okay. All right. Carol says, I miss mine too, Omar. She was stern, but oh so loving. She never forgot to show you how much you meant to her. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mia says, only ever met my grands from West Memphis, Arkansas once. My grandma name was Carrie too. Wow. That's some shit. Shirley Shore, the world's most precious and greatest pearl in the world. Shirley Shore, the world's most precious and greatest pearl in the world. What's going on? My brother Ansel Jones is in the house. What's going on, my brother Ansel Jones? Okay. Carol says, Taki, funny. My mom's name was Carrie. I think that's why I feel connected. Ain't this some shit? I mean, y'all got secrets. All right. TK Wright says, I can only pray to be as strong and as purposeful as her. How do we know they were strong? How do we know? Because evidently we were viewing our grandparents from a different set of eyes. But here's the question. Some of us are grandparents now. Some of us in our generation are grandparents now. Do you think that our grandchildren look at us in the same way as we looked at our grandparents? Especially ladies, for the grandmothers. Do you think that your grandchildren look at you with the same love, respect, and honor as we looked at our grandparents? And you know what? While I was asking that question, I was thinking, like, I already know the answer. And I know the answer is yes. Because I see these young boys. I hear these young boys talking about they wasn't nobody like their grandmother. You know what I mean? They love their granny, my granny. And I know that some of the grandmothers that they talking about have to be my age or younger. I know this for a fact. So I'm like, like maybe a little older. Like if you're 25 years old, okay, let's say you're 20 years old. You're 20 years old. Let's say you're talking about your grandmother. Your grandmother might be just around 60 years old. Or if if your mom and your grandmom both had children while they were teenagers, your grandmother might only be 50, might be 45. No, not if you're 20. So, all right, 20. We're gonna give it a strong 60. We're gonna give it a strong 60. We're gonna do that. That's what we're gonna do. So, it could be possible that grandchildren look at their grandparents through a different set of eyes, especially when the grandparents raise their grandchildren for reasons of the parents not being there, whatever. Like when your parents give birth to you when they're teenagers, like if your mom and or dad was a teenage parent, then many times the grandparents was raising both of y'all at the same time. If a 14, 15, 16-year-old girl has a baby, she ain't raising that baby on her own. The likelihood of that is very, very low because she's going to have to drop out of school. She's going to have to get a job. She's going to have to get public assistance. There's going to have to be a whole lot of resources that she's going to have to utilize in order to try to raise her baby. And she's not even raised herself. She's not finished. She's not finished growing. She's not finished developing. She's not finished learning. She's not finished, even commanding her own presence. So a lot of times the grandmother will be the one to finish raising the teenage parent and to raise the grandchildren. It happens. So we get to see, a lot of times we get to see the grandparents and the parents in the same home. So it's kind of like we're growing up with our parents, but you kind of see who's in command. You see who's in command because the one who's footing the whole bill is the grandmother. She might have to foot the bill, for your mom to go on a prom, in which case you'll be very young. You know what I mean? You might or might not remember that because you was probably only 2 or 3. You know what I'm saying? 1, 2, or 3 or whatever. But you may have witnessed your mom going to college, or your mom getting her first job, or going to trade school, or whatever the case may be, trying to become an adult. You're watching your mother and or your father grow up, but you're also watching your grandmother perform like a parent to both your parents and to you. So that might add to that air of respect, that air of love, that air of leadership that we see our grandparents display it. So I'm sure that it probably has shaded our view of our grandparents a little bit, because our grandparents can't be as great as we look at them, but it's perspective. And I think that it's an okay perspective. I think that it's more than okay to look at your grandparents as super people, super parents, carrying the weight of the world and the family on their shoulders, getting it done. But somebody grew up with your grandparents, so they know how they were. Other than being the leading, loving grandparent that they were. Somebody knew that grandma might have been a little promiscuous back in the day. Granddad might have been a player back in the day. He might have lied. He might have stole. He might have cheated. He might have went to jail, time or two. He might have got too drunk, played himself, used to gamble too much, fucked up money. You know what I mean? Fell off, had to come back, all kinds of stuff. Grandparents have lived their lives just like we're living ours. So I don't know what point that they become this super responsible person, but it happens. And we have nothing but love and respect for that happening. For that happening. Okay, so let's go. Let's go. All right. Carol Chamberlain says, no secrets, just respect for each other, Omar. You don't know that. Mm-hmm. If it's a secret, how you know? And so Jones says, they didn't tell my grandmother I was in Iraq until I got home. She went off on them. Ooh. Wow. Carol says, I can only hope to be as good a grandmother as mine was. It looks like you're pretty much on your way to me. T. Carrie Wright says, I know that she was strong. I was blessed to be born to very young parents. So I grew up with Grandma Carrie, and I asked lots of questions. Was told many stories that I never shared. Some that I have. Okay. YouTube must have got you with that character limit. Carol says there's a special bond between a grandmother and her grandchildren. It sure is. But it's a mystical bond, if you ask me. It's mystical. It's mystical, it's magical, it's mysterious. I like there's something about it. Mia says, I know the young dudes I speak to at work always big up their grandmother. They might not deal with their mother, but grandmother, she gets all the respect. There ain't no doubt about that. And I want to get into that, Mia. And so Jones says, nah, she knew I was overseas and I kept in contact every time I called home. Okay. Yeah, me, I want to get into that. You know, all right, you work in a prison. So you see hardened criminals. These dudes out there catching bodies. They out there sticking people up. They out there, if they didn't catch a body, they might have maimed somebody. They might have wheelchaired somebody. They might have shitbagged somebody. They out there, committing very violent acts. These young cats doing mad time. But they'll tell you, my grandmother this, my grandmother that, and I love my grandmother. And none of this is my grandmother's fault. Most of them have tried to shield whatever they was doing from their grandmother. How many drug dealers have I known hid stashes of coke, stashes of horses, heroin, stashes of cash, all of that, doing their networking at their grandmother's house, whatever, still tried to keep it away from their grandmother's house. I mean, from their grandmother's knowledge. And I've seen a plethora of grandmothers. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to grandmothers. No disrespect. I'm just telling you what I've seen. I've rented out houses for the first almost 20 years of my adulthood. Depends on when you start counting. My dad had me in houses, in other people's houses, renting out houses, rooms, and apartments since when I was 14 years old. So from 14 to 37, but definitely right after I got out of college. So definitely 14 years straight out out of college into adulthood, and that was with no time off. So I've seen a lot of grandmother, grandfather play. That's why I can talk about, the grandparents on crack, the grandparents on heroin, the grandparents on this, that, and the third, the thief grandparents, the grandparents that was sick, the grandparents that tried to stay alive just so they could take care of their grandkids. DMX, the rapper DMX, the superstar rapper, actor, superstar DMX, may he rest in peace. Everybody knows how he felt about his grandmother. Now, as crazy as DMX was, as much of a crackhead as DMX was, as much as a thug DMX was, as much as a dog lover DMX was, DMX found time to talk about the love that he had for his grandmother against all odds. Every chance he got, he talked about how much he loved his grandmother and cared about his grandmother. His mother, not so much. He didn't hate his mom, but he could see his mom for what he felt like she really was. He could, he never talked nothing bad about what his grandmother did. And it's a weird thing, because we talk about our ancestors. We talk about our ancestors in the most respectful, loving, and ambitious ways. And we pay homage to how we are. Like, if it wasn't for my grandparents, if it wasn't for what they did, I wouldn't be what I am today. They laid the foundation. And we have to ask ourselves, did they really lay the foundation? Listen, this is not a diss, it's a real. Did these grandparents really lay the foundation for us? And I'm going to tell you the reason that I say this. If our grandparents really laid the foundation for us, would we still be struggling financially as a people? If the elders laid the financial foundation for us, would we still be struggling financially as a people? If our elders, if our ancestors laid the unification foundation for us, would we still be struggling to unify as a people? Do I need to go on? Because we can talk about all areas of life that we as Black people struggle in. We always give praise to our ancestors, but did they really lay the foundation for us? Did they really give us the tools that we say that we needed? Do they really give us the tools that we say that they gave us? Did they really do it? Just something to think about. Just something to think about. Like I said, I love my grandmother to death. My grandmother lived in the projects. When she died in the projects, not in the hospital. She died in the projects, right there in the crib. So I definitely, my grandmother would spend money as soon as it got in her hands. And I know it because I put money in my grandmother's hands plenty of times. So I'll take this money, I put it in my grandmother's hands. Next thing you know, I swear to God, and I'm not bullshit, no more than 10 minutes later, my grandmother was going down the ramp. You would hear that boom, 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 because she was on her way to the store to get rid of the money. If you can't take it with you when you die was a person, it was Virginia Gaines. It was Virginia Gaines. If you can't take it with you when you die was a person, that was Virginia Gaines. Yo, just saying. Just saying. So, you know, we can credit them for a whole lot of things. And something about their energy, something about their love, something about their soul, something about their power was hypnotic to us grandchildren, and we saw them in a certain type of way. Which I think is a good thing. But if we really put it under a microscope and we really start looking at it for what it really is, what are we going to see, y'all? What we going to see? What to go and see? What to go and see? Mia says, I've seen grown men that break down and cry like newborn babies when it comes to grandma. Yep. Yepper. Carol says, like the handshake with the folded bills. What? In 2001, the year my grandmother's 80th birthday was in 2001, and we all went up there for her birthday celebration. It was a great thing. And me, I bought my grandmother a pair of earrings. And that's when I found out that my grandmother's ears wasn't pierced. My grandmother's ears were never pierced. I was like, what the I swear to God, here I am 31 years old. I never knew that there were women who didn't have their ears pierced. She said, no, I never had my ears pierced. She said, but these earrings are so pretty. I'm gonna find a way to wear them. I said, no, Grandma, let me take them back. I'll get you some clips. I'll get you some earrings with the clips. My grandmother was like, nah, you gave me these. I'm in love with these. I'm gonna find a way to wear these. I don't know what she did with them. I don't know what she did with them, but she did something. You know what I mean? So, to me, my grandmother was pretty amazing. She was pretty amazing in a lot of ways. And I know that I've gotten certain things from her. Certain things. But to me, or for me, there wasn't really nothing she could do to turn me off. I used to get such a kick out of her, like, this is really wonderful. this is really wonderful. Okay. Mia says my grandmother never had her ears pierced either. Only clip-on earrings. I mean, listen, I wasn't ready. But that shows you that kind of shows you, well, for me, what you will notice about somebody and what you won't notice about somebody. Now, her with her church Sunday suits and dresses and the big hats and all of that kind of stuff, I could have sworn I saw earrings. Nope. If I did, they was clip-ons. Carol says, makes me wonder if my grandmother pierced her ears. How about it? For all we know, there might have been something going on down south where they ain't do that shit. Or everybody didn't do it. I know it ain't that way now. Grandmothers today got tattoos. All kinds of piercings. Grandmothers today gonna have clit piercings. Yeah, clit, right there on the clitoris. Like I don't understand that. I don't. But yeah, it could be, Carol. I mean, what do we know? What do we know? So yeah, we always going to pay homage to the ancestors. We always going to hold it down for them. We always going to show that love, see the love, and experience the love. But like I said, with DMX, always talking about his grandmother, and he's not the only famous person that I know that really paid homage to their grandmother and grandfathers, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, we see our grandparents in a certain type of way. I know for a fact that as Ayana gets older, she's always going to remember her grandfather, and she's always going to remember him fondly. He really got a kick out of Ayana. He thought she was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And he ain't short on no on no grandkids. But they had that bond. He would come and get her whenever she came to Philly. He would come and get her. Like, he had things that he had to show her or whatever. They used to spend a lot of time together. They had a bond. So I know that she's going to remember him in a fond way. Who knows? Now we talking about a grandfather now. You know what I'm saying? I know how much she loved my grandmother. I mean, how much she loved my mom, which is her grandmother. But I know that her grandfather is gonna, he holds a special and magical place in her heart also. So, with him showing her how to, my father was a bee farmer or whatever you call a beekeeper. So he showed her how to do that. That's a big thing for a child. Like, yo, we learning how to make honey. Well, we dealing with the bees, putting the bee joint on there, and a lot of people are afraid of bugs and bees, and bees sting. So for him to show her, no, it's nothing to be afraid of. As long as you don't startle them or disrupt them or disrespect them, you can do whatever you want to with these bees. They ain't doing nothing with the honey. They just produce it. They'll let you take it as long as you show respect. Carol Chamberlain says, my grandfather was everything to me. He taught me so much. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's how I felt about my grandfather too. My grandfather was, listen, grandfather was really all that. My grandfather, who I found out later on wasn't my biological grandfather, but I ain't trying to hear that. You ain't going to, I'm sorry, I ain't trying to hear it. How can you not be somebody's father who looks that much like your father and who acts and who your father acts that much like. There's some things that can't be explained by nurture. There's some things that is just nature. My grandfather and my father looked a lot alike. How you explain that? Because my father was light skinned, my grandfather was dark skinned. So it ain't that easy for them, to look that much alike. My grandfather used to have this big Flintstone lump on his head. On the which side was it on? On the right side. They said it was a result of a frying pan. You know what I mean? The big black iron skillet. Evidently, it didn't stop nothing, no. Evidently, it ain't stopped nothing, no. My grandfather was he was something else. He knew how to, he was a dog whisperer. He knew how to talk to dogs, and it was my grandfather knew how to talk to dogs. Real shit. How you gonna have 10 dogs and they all know their name individually? He'd be like, Lucy, Lucy. And none of the dogs coming except for Lucy. They was all barking, but when he called Lucy, Lucy come. They had regular names, Greg. You know what I mean? Like, it was crazy. It was, but yeah. So we see our grandparents through a different set of lenses. Make sure y'all hit that like button, y'all. Make sure that y'all share the show. Make sure that y'all subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed to the channel if you haven't subscribed to the channel. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Carol says, my grandfather was my grandmother's second husband. Never met her first husband, so that's all I know. That might have been all you needed. Like I said, they say, and do this little DNA thing, that another man was my father's biological father. That's what they say. I'm good with Wardell McIntyre. Yeah, I'm good with him. More than good. He lived to be 88 years old. My so-called biological, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to disrespect I'm not trying to disrespect my biological grandfather when I say my so-called grandfather, but I never met him. I never set eyes on the man. My father didn't find out that he was his real father until he was in his 70s. So I mean, what can we do? I mean, what we want? What I want? But he lived to be like 93, 94. So it is what it is. Carol says it was to me. Good enough for me. Good enough for I. And so Jones says, my grandmother loved one of my ex-girlfriends. We still laugh about it today. You know how it is, Ansel. Sometimes your parents or your grandparents get attached to people that you may no longer be attached to. And sometimes the people who you were no longer attached to got, attached to your parents or your grandparents. You know how it go. It be that way sometimes. The thing is, they'll make trouble. You got to be careful of that. They will make trouble. Popping up on certain holidays. I know I'm just here to see your mom, but you know them. And that's the funny thing about grandparents. That's the funny thing about grandparents, because grandparents will entertain anybody that they love and anybody that loves them. So, there may be times when you have some questions about loyalty. Now, your parents, you're going to get on them about entertaining your exes and all of that kind of stuff. You're going to get on them. But your grandmother, you just going to have to eat that. Like, Yeah, well, I just have to explain to my girl or my wife that my ex comes to bring. She comes to bring my grandmother, flowers and shit on Easter, cards and money on Mother's Day, candy and shit on Valentine's Day, um, gifts and stuff on her birthday and Christmas. And sometimes she might show up for Thanksgiving and Labor Day and the cookout and Arbor Day and Columbus Day, and Flag Day and Veterans Day. Because my grandmother used to work at quartermaster down they made the military uniform, so she wasn't really in the military, but she was military connected. So on Veterans Day, my ex, she come to see see my grandma, and Flag Day, because both of them are very patriotic, and and Martin Luther King Day, because Martin Luther King had a big impact on my grandmother, so she come to see her on MLK Day, and can't forget the 4th of July, and yeah. Anyway, that's right, Carol. Arbor Day. It's a holiday, baby. It's a holiday. And she coming to see her, for Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. Yeah. She gave my grandmother a Rosh Hashanah gift. What do you mean it's not a holiday? The kids was out of school. My ex is a teacher. What you talking about? What you talking about? Don't be disrespectful. Don't be disrespectful. Happy Passover. Happy belated Passover. Don't be disrespectful. Yeah. So anyway, nobody goes against their grandma. Grandmothers get a pass. They can do whatever they want. Free reign, roam all around the world. They can astral travel. What was the name of that thing on the Starship Enterprise on Star Trek, where they could jump inside that tube and go and wind up somewhere else? What was that called? I should know what it's called because I was forced to watch that garbage. Cheryl used to make us watch Star Trek. No, I don't like Star Trek. No, I never saw Star Wars. No, I don't go for none of that sci-fi shit. I don't know. It's just not my thing. Never been my thing. I think it's corny. But that's just me. That's me. I don't think my grandma was a big sci-fi fan either. I don't remember. Carol, you said me either. I don't know. I mean, listen, man. Unfortunately and fortunately, my imagination kind of aligns with the possibilities that I know that man does. You know what I'm saying? So when we talk about our grandparents and we talk about our perception of how they were and how we would never go against them, we're kind of talking about the magic command of presence that a human being that shared our bloodline or not had over us or had to us towards us. You know what I mean? Like, listen, we just couldn't take our eyes off of this thing. We couldn't They just commanded our attention. And like I said, man, you got people who you got niggas that are doing mad crazy bids in state prisons, fed prisons. They have listen, I don't have to tell y'all the evil that men do. We ain't got to go into that. You know people, I know people, we know people who have done some atrocities. But all of those people that I know and know of had love and respect and nothing but good words to say about the grandmama. How do we explain it? How do we how do we explain it? Because there is an explanation out there. I don't have it. You may have it, but it's real. It's real. All right, y'all. It's like that, y'all. That, y'all. Yeah. It's like that, y'all. Hey. I'll tell you what. This is random. This is very random. But I'm real pissed off that my man Derek Green dropped out of the Philadelphia mayoral race. Because that's who I was going to vote for. And to keep it a buck, I don't know. I don't know who I could vote for now. I don't know. But I'll tell you what I do know. I know that we have some birthday shout outs to do. Some people were born on this glorious. No, I didn't watch the debate. I didn't watch it. Something tells me I need to go back and watch it, but April 18th, and they deserve to be acknowledged. So let's go about our business of acknowledging them and making them feel special because they are special because they are special because they are SPECIAL. They get the RESPECT, RSPECIAL. They get the RESPECT, they are SPECIAL. They get the RESPECT, they get number one out the box. Anisha Ebony Robinson, happy birthday to you. And also Kimberly C. Henry, happy birthday to you. And Wendy McIntyre, no relation. But what up, cuz? Turning 48 years old today, happy birthday to you. And Chantel K. Nelson, happy birthday to you. Y'all need to all stop lying about your age. This is ridiculous. And Marantha Pierre, happy birthday to you. And Precious Sazy, happy birthday to you. And Siobhan Shavoni, turning 42 years old today. And Osborne Abril Osborne, that's April Osborne, happy birthday to you. And Monet Cash, happy birthday to you. And Lady Karma, happy birthday to you. And last but not least, turning 39 years old today, to Neil Thomas. I want to say happy birthday to all of y'all. And anyone else out there who shares this birthday on this glorious April 18th. I hope that today finds you all in good health, happiness, mind, body, soul, and spirit. All of y'all go ahead and turn up. But don't turn up too loud. Just turn up loud enough so everybody can hear you. Rock out, rock on and do the damn, the rock out, rock on and do the damn, rock out, rock on and do the damn thing. You do your thing, y'all. Represent the queens and kings. You do your thing, y'all. Represent the queens and kings. Good things happen to those who wait. Great things happen to those who grind. And anything can happen to those who go for theirs. So go hard, go for yours. And remember, man, listen. Yo, nobody goes against the granny because she's better than all Manny. And I tell you, she's worthy of respect, whether she did or didn't come at your neck. She would discipline you, would make sure that you grew and told you the things that you know. And now you knew. better and how to handle yourself out there in the pub. And you was part of a club, of a family, a bloodline, a shared line. You made sure that you didn't have your behind out there when the street lights came on. You made sure that you didn't stay out till dawn, and you got better and you got independent, but you make sure you never got suspended and had to have your grandmother come up to school, because if you did that, boy, you was a damn fool, because you ain't want to see your grandmother's face, and you ain't want to take up none of her hard space and make her feel bad or nothing about nothing that you done, because you was a grandson but more like a son, and she was the one. And so you love, and I miss my grandmother from heavens above, and I know that a lot of y'all miss yours, and we gonna do this thing until we get yours or get ours. It's not sour, it's kind of sweet. The memory is like heat, heating up a piece of food that you love to just chomp. Against grandparents, no comp. All right. Peace to all my day ones, my everydays, and my brand news. I love y'all to death, resuscitate y'all, and love y'all right back to life. We will be back tomorrow for another Daily Go Getterism show. So, Carol Chamberlain, I appreciate you. Thanks for the super chat. Yo, you know how we do. I appreciate you. Thanks for the super chat. Know how we do. That's my words, y'all. All right. Don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to share the show. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet. You know what I'm saying? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the channel. All right, y'all. So, Blog Talk, we gonna get you out of here. Yeah. For my YouTubers, you know just how we do, but thanks for coming on through. So you're on the other side, my boobers. Yeah, word on the other side, my boobers. Yeah, on the other side. I say peace.